Welcome to the CCNA preparation guide brought to you by Eduonics for the 200-120 exam. We're still in chapter 4 and we're going to be taking a look at some commands that you can execute to do different things on a router. Some of these things you can do on any Cisco device, really, router, switch, but these are primarily going to be based around a router. We're going to be looking at the host name and how to change it, the local user and password, the enable secret password, console and VTY logins, an exec timeout, service password encryption, interface IP address, loopback, banner, MOTD, and copy run start. So to change the host name, you have to go into enable mode and then configure terminal, and then it's just a simple case of doing hostname space and then the name that you want it to be. It'll appear when somebody does a network scan as the host name of the device. It's also what it uses for NTP and many other things as well. So choose it carefully, because if you were to name your device one thing and have it set to something else elsewhere, it could cause all end of problems. So make sure it's exactly how you want it to be. So you need to verify that the router prompt displays the new host name as well. It should do it straight away. It's not one of these systems that you have to reboot for it to take effect. Anything that you do has an immediate effect in the running config, and then you just do the copy run start for it to copy the running config through to the startup config. So then the enable password. You know before when we have to do en to actually get anywhere on the router, and then you do conft. Well, when you do en, you can actually put a password on there to stop anybody getting into enable mode, because there's lots of things you can do in enable mode. You don't have to go into configure terminal to damage the router. You can just do it in enable. So you have to go into enable mode, then configure terminal, and then enable password, and then the password, and then enable secret, and then the password, and then end, enable, and end. Now the secret, basically the enable secret password encrypts it in the config, because if you didn't encrypt it in the config, you would see it in plain text, and it puts like a certain bit encryption on it, and you just have this long MD5. Well, it looks like an MD5 sum basically, of characters in the config. Incidentally, that's also what you would do. You would do the enable secret for individual users as well, because a lot of routers have the ability to handle VPN connections from individual users, and the usernames and passwords are specified in config with a very similar process, which we'll cover soon. So idle privilege exec timeout, you do enable configure terminal, and then you do line con 0, and then exec timeout in milliseconds end, and then show running config to verify. And what that does is if somebody logs in with privilege mode in enable or any other kind of high privilege that you've set, it's the time it takes from them being idle, so the last keyboard press or anything that the device receives from the user, it's the minute that happens through this exec timeout starts, and until you specify here minutes and seconds. Say if it was 120 seconds, after 120 seconds they wouldn't be logged out, but they'd be logged out of their privilege mode back into, just the standard console, which is great really. So the global Ethernet interface, I know we've kind of already covered this, but there's a few other things that you can do in there. You can do enable, and then you do a show interface brief, configure terminal, and then the interface, whether it be fast Ethernet or gigabit, and then 0 / the port number. Remember I said the 0 is usually used for the stacked switch, so 0 would be switch number 1 in the stack, and then the next one up would be 1 / then 2 / 3 / if you had a 4 stack switch or router. So then the description. This is also very, very handy, especially when it comes to managing configs and knowing what's plugged in where. So although all of your cables inside the data center might be nicely labeled up, telling you exactly where they've gone to, in your config, if you didn't have a description in there, it would be pretty rubbish, because you just have a plain config. You wouldn't know what was plugged in where. All you would know is the IP address of the port. So the descriptions are probably one of the most important things you can do on a port for management and operations and maintenance, etc. It's invaluable. So then it's a string. I think it's up to 117 characters long. You can put in there anything you want apart from special characters. Then you have the IP address, which is the IP address followed by mask. on some old devices you had to put IP address and then a space and then net and then space and then the address, which is very kind of Linuxy. You don't have to do it anymore. You then do no shut. By default, even though you may not see it on the interface, there is a shutdown command on there, which means that the interface doesn't come up. And then once you've done whatever you want to do, you need to do a no shut to remove the shut, and then the interface will come up. You can also set the duplex and the speed automatically as well. You can set the duplex to half or full, or you can set the speed to 10, 100, 1000, or it's easier just to set it to auto, and then it'll negotiate in whatever it can at that particular moment. You then do end, and then you do a show IP interface brief, just to give you a few details on the interface. It'll give you kind of read and writes and ARP requests and things, just to make sure it all looks okay. So you have a root or a default gateway. I'm sure everybody's heard of a default gateway before, even if you don't know what it means. A router has a routing table. Say if it has two directly connected networks, one on 10.0.0.0 and one on 11.0.0. If a user on the network requests something else, the router needs to know what to do with it, and that's the default route. So it may just say put it down Ethernet 01, put it down Ethernet 02. As long as it's got something in there, then that's its default route. So you just do enable, configure terminal, you do IP routing, and then you do IP route with the destination prefix, then the next hop IP address, and then the administrative distance if you want to, which makes it permanent. Then you do the IP default network, which is the network number, or you do IP route, which is the destination prefix mask with the next hop IP address, which is this exactly here. So you don't have to specify a subnet with the IP default network. It'll just figure it out automatically because the destination is already being mapped in here with IP route, and it's already been given the net mask here. So it's basically just identifying, it's linking the IP default network to this, rather than saying this is what you're using here and this is the net mask. It's saying use the IP route you have listed under this address here. So it'll look in its IP routing table and it'll find this one here and it'll send it down there. And then you do show IP route just to confirm that. So in configuring the VTY lines, you do enable mode, configure terminal, then you do the line VTY number, then you do a password, login and show running, and then from another network device you try and access the router. Now some routers have telnet, some routers have the ability for SSH, so abbreviated as VTY, virtual teletype. It's a command line interface that enables users to connect to the daemon using, well, it's telnet mainly. To connect to VTY, you must have the password set up. If you don't have a password on there, then the VTY is automatically disabled. So as you can see here, we have to put the password in, password of guess again, and then login is the command that's executed after they got the password correct. And configuring AUX, you would do enable, configure terminal, and then you do line AUX 0, and then if you have a look at the notes attached to this slide, to configure the line on your particular implementation of the AUX port. But say if we were to take something like a Cisco, if we go for a switch and say like a 2960G or something like that, an AUX port is generally used in the same term as a serial port. Well, in fact, sorry, it is mainly used on routers, and they're asynchronous serial ports. The console port and the AUX port are configured as data terminal equipment, like DTEs, and for Cisco kind of 1000s, 1600s, 2600s, 3600s serial routers, the console and AUX ports both use RJ45 connectors. So now all the places you can copy the config to, you can do enable, and then you can do copy running config startup config, or you can do copy run start, or you can do copy RS and it'll do exactly the same thing, or you can do copy NVRAM startup config to FTP, RCP or TFTP. You can show flash to see what config you've got to possibly copy, or you can copy from flash even right the way through to FTP, RCP, TFTP. There's generally just a CF card sitting inside these routers. You can remove it if you want to. It won't do you very much, but it's just a compact flash card that holds everything on there, so it's quite robust. And this is what you'll see on the screen. If you do copy nvram startup config to a local TFTP server for backup, which you should always do, it'll ask you for the remote host, and then it'll ask you for the name, which the default is RTR2 config. You just accept that, and then it's all done. So copy config to TFTP, again, this is exactly what you see here. It's writing the copy flash. This is copying the flash image to a TFTP server for backup purposes from a 3900. All done. So then you have the config verification. You can do a show version, which displays the system hardware version, the installed software version, the names and sources of config files and the boot images, and the amount of installed DRAM, NVRAM, and flash memory. You can do show diags, which is a list and displays diagnostic information about the installed controllers, interface processors, and port adapters. Show interfaces, as we've already seen that, it shows all the interface information and if it's up or down. Show IP interface brief is a brief summary of what's above, and the show configuration, which is verify that you've configured the correct hostname and password. Now, message of the day. So here's a good kind of few usage guidelines here. You can create multiple MOTD banners. You press enter before typing the delimited character to start a new line. You can enter up to 40 lines of text, for example. If you do a single line one, you do banner MOTD and then unauthorized access to this device is prohibited. Then you do welcome authorized users, unauthorized access prohibited. And if you want to go back to the default MOTD, you would just do no banner MOTD and it would turn it off.